Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Kenneth M. Tyler, Chair of the Department of Educational, School, and Counseling Psychology at the University of Kentucky, and our esteemed panel.
Thank you, and good morning. Oh, this mic actually works. Thank you all for coming out today to what we expect to be a very informative and inspiring discussion about children in rural America. I'm really thrilled to be a part of this panel, and before we begin, just a couple of statistics to get our ideas and facts rolling here. Nearly 1 in 6 children grow up in poverty across America. And what we oftentimes don't think about is that rural child poverty is actually higher than urban poverty across 40 states. And because of these circumstances, millions of kids never really reach their full potential. There are an estimated 12 million hungry children in America, and kids are falling about 4 to 5 months behind during the pandemic. I'm honored to be here today by 3 individuals from different sectors and backgrounds who have a particular expertise that center around the unique challenges facing these children in rural America and what we can do collectively to help solve a lot of the inequities that they face. Please join me in welcoming once again Betsy, Denine, and Henry. So Betsy, let's start with you. You lead the U.S. programs for Save the Children. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work in rural America and some of those critical collaborations that can drive change for children?
Sure. Well, it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to be back in Kentucky where Save the Children's roots are. We actually got our start during the Great Depression serving hot lunches to kids in Harlan County, which is about 3 hours southeast of here. And 90 years later, our commitment to rural America is stronger than ever. We work to ensure that children arrive at kindergarten's door ready for success and leave elementary school reading and doing math at or above grade level proficiency. So what that looks like is we run home visiting programs, Head Start, early Head Start programs. We also provide in-school, after-school, and summer support for kids who are struggling with literacy and math. And knowing that kids can't learn if their bellies are empty, we work with communities to fight child hunger. We also, a more recent initiative for us is focus on collective impact and other community-led efforts to ensure that all children within a community are supported and successful from cradle to career. None of this work would be possible without partnerships. We've set a goal for ourselves at Save the Children of ensuring that all children in rural America have a healthy, strong foundation to thrive as learners and in life. But again, none of that would be possible without partnerships. Partners are really key to everything we do.
Indeed, indeed. And Denine, I understand that Dollar General also has a legacy of supporting education and literacy. Can you tell us a little bit about why investment in literacy and education is such a priority for your organization?
Sure. Dollar General has been supporting literacy for a very long time. And for those of you who don't know us that well, our company was started at the end of the Great Depression, just like Save the Children. Wow. And our co-founder, J.L. Turner, was functionally illiterate with only a 3rd grade education. He had to drop out of school when his father passed away unexpectedly as the oldest son in the family to help take care of the farm. And he saw all of his neighbors struggling with meeting just the basic needs, and nobody should have to go without the basic needs in life. And so we have the legacy of literacy, but we remain committed and we remain involved because the needs across our nation are so great, right? And you want to talk about not going without the basics, and education is something that should not be a luxury. It shouldn't be something that anyone has to go out without. It's definitely at the heart of where we are and who we are. And you want to talk about leveling the playing fields in life? Open the doorway to education, give that opportunity, and the game starts to change. And all great education, it begins with the ability to read well. And so that's why we focused very hard, very closely, and very tightly on literacy and basic educational needs so that we can give individuals, whether they're youth, like we're working with Save the Children, we're very proud of, and the collective impact at the grassroots level with Henry and his organizations, so that we can give everybody that opportunity from the twinkle to the wrinkle to be successful and have great pathways to the future, right? So we're very grateful and thankful for our partnership with Save the Children and to be here today to talk about this important subject.
I love that, the twinkle to the wrinkle. It's very cool. And building on that, Henry, as a superintendent of a school district in rural Washington, what do you see as some of the unique challenges that your community faces? And also, what role do you think the local school district and its leaders play in closing these equity gaps?
Well, first of all, Nechmaitski, which means good morning in the language of the Yakima people.
Thank you.
And buenos dias ustedes in Spanish. It's an honor to be here. When I think about rural America, I think there's some things that are in common, whether we're here in Kentucky, the Mississippi Delta, or Eastern Washington, where I work. And that's an absence of infrastructure. Some of the sessions yesterday, they talked about food insecurity, food shortage, fresh produce. That's alive and well, that absence in rural America. Transportation access, healthcare access are also challenges that rural America faces. Also, in smaller school districts, there's a lack of infrastructure and the ability to effectively engage with partners. A lot of small rural districts face that. They don't have the capacity to manage those resources. So I do think it's incumbent on us as small school district leaders to seek out partnerships. And I think back to something I learned as a principal intern interviewing a Blackfeet elder and asking him about leadership from an indigenous perspective. And he offered this, that in times of stress, we think here. Leaders need to think here. I've come to appreciate that from two things. First of all, in times of crisis, we think about ourselves. And we need to be thinking about the broader good. But I also think it applies to this work here, that we can't think solely about our entities, whichever they may be that you represent, that we need to think about the broader good and focus on children and the needs of children.
That's excellent, that's excellent. And Henry, you touched on something that I'd really like for us to really expand on here as part of this panel. Betsy, can you share a little bit about your intersections of community and private sector experience and what that means in working in organizations like yours?
Sure. So Save the Children reached about 1 million children in the United States in 2021, but we wouldn't have been able to do any of that without partners like Grandview and Dollar General. Partners are really, as I said earlier, at the core of everything that we do, from the local level where we work with school districts like Henry's and other community-based organizations to meet the educational and nutritional needs of children, to the state level where we work with organizations like Partners for Rural Impact here in Kentucky. Dreama Gentry is in the audience today. She's one of our biggest partners in southeastern Kentucky and in ensuring that children are successful from cradle to career. As another example, we work with Mountaineer Food Bank in West Virginia. And they are a food bank that serves most of the state, including the counties where we work. But together we've realized that there are a lot of families who don't have consistent or reliable access to transportation, which means they can't get themselves to the food bank to get what they need for their families. And so we're exploring a DoorDash or Uber Eats type partnership that would actually allow families to place their orders and have the food brought directly to them. So then we think about partnerships at the national level, and that's where organizations like Dollar General come in. We have wonderful private supporters, as well as great partnerships with the Commonwealth of Kentucky and other states who really have prioritized the needs of children in rural communities. And I'd say a newer area of focus for us is on building partnerships with other national nonprofits. Save the Children's expertise in the U.S. is really in education, hunger, and child protection. But there are a whole lot of other issues that go into determining whether a child will be successful in life.
Sure.
And so we seek to find other organizations to join with us in rural communities to build that infrastructure that Henry was talking about and to ensure that all of the children's needs are being met. So it's all about partnerships for us at every level at Save the Children.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Denine, how do you see these types of organizations coming together in a way that allow communities to thrive?
You know, I think the most beautiful thing that happens is when we all come together, all of a sudden you increase access, right?
Sure.
So one of the greatest things that we're seeing that's happened, we had needs way before this pandemic hit. Now they've exacerbated the needs, right? All the needs have grown. And to really begin to tackle this, we're gonna have to come together in a beautiful and united way. We're not gonna be able to do this alone, and we can serve more when we serve together. And one of the things that we've noticed is that people start talking about the achievement gap. The achievement gap is real. We know that, right? But what we need to start shifting some of our focus in language and dialogue around is not just the achievement gap, but the opportunity gap. Because in many markets and in many communities, that achievement gap's not going to change if we don't invest in giving them the opportunities they need and the resources they need to thrive and to grow. So when we begin to change that dialogue, begin to increase that access to that opportunity, then things start to change. And that's why we love partnerships, and that's why we need each other, and that's why we're grateful to have a national relationship and a grassroots partnerships to go in and really lean in and to facilitate those opportunities together. And you know, as a nonprofit leader at a corporation, I welcome any dialogue and conversation with each of you about how we can go and tackle this together. So hopefully we can have some conversations about innovation as well.
Indeed, indeed. I'm really curious and appreciative as a professor of educational psychology of your mentioning of the achievement gap being linked to an opportunity gap. So I really appreciate you saying that. But if we're thinking about sort of culmination of us as a panel, us as a community, and looking to close a lot of these gaps, I'm really interested in what the successful outcome will look like of that. So when we think about the success of these partnerships, and Henry, I'll start with you, what does that success look like when we think of these partnerings, when we think of these organizations and institutions coming together for the purposes of not only closing these inequity gaps, but ultimately moving past those into something in the near future? What does that success look like?
Sure. I'm taken back to the 1850s and a Hung Papasu holy man and a warrior who offered a sitting bull. Many of you are familiar with Sitting Bull. Let us put our minds together and envision a brighter future. And I think I hear that in Denine's comments about partnership and working together. Collaboration is a unique, common thread through many cultures around our world, and I think it's very relevant now. I shudder to think about what life in Grandview would have been like without the partnership that we've been afforded with Save the Children. I think we're going into year 3 of Save the Children. And when we think about the way that the pandemic hit small rural America and households that were dependent on mother and father going to work daily, and then because of a virtual shift to instruction, somebody had to be home with children. So the mother or the father had to choose to stay home and not go earn an income. And so that exasperated the food shortage. And in comes Save the Children with semi-trucks full of food, semi-trucks full of early literacy, math, science supports for the children of Grandview. I don't have to imagine what that looked like because I had colleagues in my region. I work in Eastern Washington, about 25 school districts, and I heard them in anguish about their inability to meet those needs of their community, while I was able, because of circumstances with partnerships, through collective impact, to meet those needs of our community. And I've got images of young children running to meet school buses to deliver lunches. Lines of community members in food distribution chains. That was a blessing, and we were able to help families in a time of need so that they could settle down and focus on supporting children learning in a pandemic scenario.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And Denine, what does success look like to Dollar General when it comes to these types of partnerships and getting together with the focus on children, particularly rural children?
Yeah. Well, success as it relates to this specifically, it's about how do we come together? How do we increase access, increase outcomes and results, right? And also create a sustainable model that can stay behind building that infrastructure as you go. It's not an in and out, it's a long-term gain and win. It's that type of game plan. And we love that because what we see, it's kind of like what you talked about just a moment ago. One of the things that we love is that through the partnership and collaboration that we have with Save the Children, we're able to nourish the minds and the bodies. So we're like, you know what, kids in rural communities, you don't have access to go to some of these programs. Let's get on the school buses. We're taking food and books and instructional materials to you. We're taking it to your home. That's the barrier, let's remove the barrier. I love the fact that they're solution driven, that great things start to happen when you really put children and families first. And so you focus on their needs and not what you think it should be. And so I love that approach to work and collaboration, and that's a real win and success. And so when you start looking at this, when you start looking at literacy and education, when you start looking at opportunity. We already talked about this is an equity issue. This is an opportunity issue.
Indeed.
And I don't care if you look at it from the lens of, you're looking at it from a civil right, a moral right, an economic empowerment. If you're looking at it from just workforce readiness, whatever lens you want to look at, we must start to lean in together and change the dialogue and elevate the conversation around education, around access, and especially in marginalized communities and economically fragile families who are already at risk. It's not about what could have been or should have been, but what can be. So how do we lift together? Just say, come on, let's lean in, we got this. And great partnerships really begin to do that. And we don't take it from our perspective. We take it and lean in from the perspective of those we need first, so you remove their barriers, not your own. And then you serve graciously. And that's why I love this partnership with Save the Children. I love the fact you have a national approach, so you've got scalability,
Yes.
and you have local accountability and impact at the grassroots level. And so we think this is one of our successful partnerships and relationships. But obviously, like I said before, we need more of you. We need all of us to lean in right now. This educational disruption has left a huge wake, and we can't do it alone. So hopefully you guys will reach out and come join us.
Indeed. I told you this would be an inspirational panel. So looking ahead, Betsy, what do you see next in terms of partnerships for children in rural America? And I think more to your point, Denine, what is it that the people in the room are going to be able to do to help facilitate a lot of the development of those partnerships so that we close those inequity gaps in rural America?
I think one of our frustrations at Save the Children and among the other partners we work with in rural communities is that attention on rural America is sporadic. And the pandemic has shined a spotlight on the inequities that exist across our country, and there has been more attention on the particular inequities in rural communities. I'm hopeful that coming out of the pandemic, we don't leave those behind. We don't just go back to life as normal and forget about the people who don't have the opportunities that we've been discussing today. I think as we've been talking about so much, it's really about building infrastructure, and for us it's about putting the result at the center and getting everyone within a community to align around kindergarten readiness or grade level proficiency or college and career readiness. And that's at the center of what we're doing, and we believe that if everyone can put the result at the center, that's how you move from this to this. And so that gives me a lot of hope. I think that if what comes out of today's session is more of an interest in rural communities, whether it's more funding, policy change, new partnerships, I'd love to see that. That's really important, and we need more of that. And I also think that if I could tell you one thing about rural communities and the communities that we work with, they're incredibly resilient and incredibly innovative. And I think if businesses, philanthropy, government, and nonprofits can rally around rural communities and support them, we really can achieve that ideal of having all children in rural America having success in school and in life. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Indeed, indeed. So just in wrapping up here, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel and being, exposed to a lot of what work you all are doing at the national level, and certainly your work with, yours as a superintendent in rural Washington. I think as we close here, it's important to consider the mode of collaboration, this notion of communalism working and operating in tandem in community as a means to assist those individuals who we know might be struggling, especially in rural America. And so, again, it's important for us to think beyond ourselves, to your point, Henry, and what we can do, how we can think outwardly, but we never have to do that independently. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.